Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In this video we are going to begin with the very first chapter of your new history book, the cover of which I am showing to you presently. When we talk about the changes from the medieval period to modern, it occurred with the arrival of the British on the shores of India. But society and economy take a long time to change and often cannot be periodized. There were some very prominent defining features of the modern period. The modern period saw scientific progress, industrialization, colonization, and urbanization or growth of cities. As is recorded by historians, modern period began from 18th century. This is generally known as the starting point of the modern period. These changing trends were first visible in Europe. In course of time, they also exercised a significant impact on India. But we cannot give a particular date for that. We cannot say that from this date all these changes started in our country. The changes that took place were slow or gradual. These changes that we will discuss now were the defining features of modern period. The term modern period came to be characterized by changes such as the expansion of trade, industrialization, urbanization, swift transport and communication, widespread literacy, democratic political systems based on ideas like liberty and equality, and large-scale migration of people in search of new occupations. These changes began in Europe as early as 15th century AD and were ushered in by events such as Renaissance, voyages of discovery and the Industrial Revolution. At that time, facts were collected through source materials. Source materials are of two types, namely primary and secondary. Now, what are source materials? Primary sources provide first-hand accounts of the events, practices, or conditions that we are studying. They may be in different forms. Literary source materials, such as original official documents, administrative records, official letters, survey reports, and memoirs. And non-official documents such as personal letters, diaries, newspapers, and works of literature. Archaeological remains as coins, inscriptions, and land grants on copper plates, armaments, and artifacts were collected. Audio cassettes, films, and videotapes of incidents or of interviews of important personalities are all primary source materials. These are now preserved in national and state archives and museums. Then we have secondary source materials. Secondary sources are usually in the form of works of historians and scholars who arrive at conclusion after carefully studying the primary sources. These works may be in the form of reports, reviews, articles, or books. Films based on true incidents with supporting evidence from primary source materials may be treated as secondary sources. Now, what were the changes in Europe? Society in medieval Europe was based on the feudal system in which land was owned by lords who provided protection to the peasants who worked on their lands. The lords paid taxes to the king or provided him with soldiers. Thus, land was the main source of livelihood and political power was exercised by the king, the feudal lords, and the church. During the 11th century to the 13th century, The Crusades or Holy Wars were fought between the Christians and Muslims. These wars resulted in interaction between the Europeans and the Arabs and opened up trade contacts between them, resulting in the emergence of a class of wealthy merchants. They settled in major trade centers which grew into large cities like London, Paris, Rome, Venice, and Genoa. The people living in these cities were outside the control of feudal lords and their laws. The wealthy merchant class, along with professionals like doctors, lawyers, and teachers, exercised a lot of influence in society. They formed a new group in society, the middle class, who were neither feudal lords nor the common masses. An event of great historical importance or significance occurred in 1453 when the Ottoman Turks occupied Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople was not only a great center of classical Greek and Latin learning, but was also at the crossroads of the trade between the West and the East. Its fall had two effects. First, the artists and the scholars fled to Italy, where they were encouraged to pursue their art and studies. Secondly, the overland route to the east was blocked, which disrupted trade. While the first led to the Renaissance, followed by the Protestant Reformation movement, the second led to great voyages of discovery. The revival of Greek and Latin learning led to a cultural movement called the Renaissance. Renaissance, which means rebirth in French, began in Italy and spread to other parts of Europe between the 14th and 16th century. Renaissance was noted for two main features: the spirit of inquiry and humanism. The spirit of inquiry is the urge to ask questions and to seek answers through a scientific method like observation, experiments, and logical thinking. The concept of humanism made man and everything concerning him the most important subject of study. Among the most incredible inventions that took place during the Renaissance was the invention of the printing press. The first invention was done by Gutenberg. He invented the printing press. The first book to be printed was the Gutenberg Bible, which got printed in the year 1456. Now let us see what the Protestant Reformation movement was. The Roman Catholic Church, led by the Pope, exercised unquestioned authority over the rulers and the people of Western Europe. The Pope maintained his own army, waged wars, and collected taxes from the lands owned by the church and laid down norms and traditions that were binding on all Christians. If a Christian dared to question or disobey the church norms, he was proclaimed a sinner. He was denied all church services and he was condemned to hell after death. A sinner was severely punished and could even be burnt alive. The church had collected a lot of money by charging people in various forms. These included the tithe or 1/10 of income of every Christian. Moreover, it was a common practice for Christians to confess their sins before a priest. The church used to issue letters of pardon. These letters of pardon or forgiveness were called indulgences. These letters promised remission or freedom from punishment for sin. The sinner could do penance in the form of a special service or go to a place of pilgrimage. The rich people, however, avoided doing penance by buying these indulgences. Martin Luther, a German priest, began a Protestant Reformation movement. He challenged the wrong practices of the church and directly attacked the sale of indulgences, which, in his opinion, were totally wrong. Now, let us see how different voyages of discovery came about. In the 15th century, when the overland trade route to the east became blocked, Europeans began seeking alternative sea routes. The inventions of the mariner's compass, astrolabe, and quadrant. Astrolabe, which is an astronomical and navigational device, and quadrant, which is also a measuring device, plus improvements in shipbuilding and cartography, which is map making, and the use of gunpowder made long, dangerous sea voyages possible. Adventurers and explorers were given great support by European merchants and rulers. All these things led people like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Magellan, and others to discover new routes to the west and east. So, the period from 15th to 18th century came to be known as the Age of Discovery. In the 18th century, mechanization led to large-scale production of goods, which brought about an industrial revolution. It was characterized by the use of steam power, the growth of factories, and increased demand for manufactured goods. The Industrial Revolution started in Britain. A number of factors created the condition that made the country the birthplace of Industrial Revolution. These were improvement in agriculture, mineral resources, in which the country had rich supply of coal and iron, and there were technological changes in which inventions like steam energy powered the Industrial Revolution. Then transportation. Transportation improved and British colonies became suppliers as well as consumers. All these inventions and revolutions brought the rise of imperialism. Now, what is imperialism? The policy or practice of a country extending its power by acquiring territories or colonies is called imperialism. Imperialism generally involved the exploitation of the colonies for the benefit of the mother country. The natural resources of the colonies were brought to the mother countries and finished products were sent back to be sold. To make things simple, a network of roads, canals, railways, and telegraph lines was set up. I hope you all have understood the lesson well. In our next video, we will be doing our next lesson, which is growth of nationalism. Till then, thank you for watching.